The ongoing dumpster fire of the Bishop's 2018 Youth Synod can't end soon enough. Of course, it won't end anytime soon. That'd be a real mercy from the crowd of mercy, and we can't have that. This is a prime opportunity for all of us to practice carrying our crosses, and this synod is a heavy cross indeed. So let's dive into this hot mess and see what madness awaits. There's a wonderful Twitter account that is documenting in real time the really crazy things being said at the synod. If you're on Twitter, give them a follow. You'll see their address on the screen here in a second. Let's have a look at some of these choice cuts. Again, these are things that are really being said at the synod by young people who had been invited to participate, as well as, if you can believe it, by the bishops, priests, and religious who were invited to attend. This is a who's who of modernists and the future modernist saints that will be successfully rebutting St. Thomas Aquinas' hard teachings. Let's have a look. We need to make sure we are clear that young people who don't agree with the church on sex are still members of the church. That's not a Pandora's box if I've ever seen one. What could possibly go wrong by letting people receive Holy Communion and still being Catholics in good standing who don't agree with the church's teaching on human sexuality? People like to combine physical and spiritual activities, e.g. yoga. No place in church for that. That's because yoga is a pagan practice. Use of sports to build character and build teamwork. A modus will come. I just imagine playing kickball during the mass. I can't even. The psychological way of finding your self-actualization should also be included, presumably in the final document. Self-actualization is a modern pop psychology garbage heap that should not be touched by the synod. What do you mean by traditional family? This term should be explained, and this is where we get to the meat of the matter. There is an open hostility here to the traditional family, and it has been an open hostility in the church since the Lavender Mafia really got its hooks into the halls of power. We had a debate in our small group about non-ideal groupings from the Christian perspective. Does leadership in the church require bishops and priests to proclaim the gospel truth by denying that these are families? And by these families, they're talking, of course, about non-traditional families. We're talking same-sex pairings and other strange arrangements that are in vogue in the increasingly pagan world. Don't be fooled. This is all an attempt to paganize the culture. That is all that this is. The USA has many homeschoolers. Bishops in the USA are not united, as homeschooling can have an ideological basis. Kids may have special needs. Are parents qualified to homeschool them? Yes, parents are qualified to homeschool their own children most of the time. Again, real hot topics are touching here at the synod, isn't it? It is necessary to reform the whole subject of anthropological challenges and the revision of such capital issues as love, sexuality, women, and gender ideology. Like I said, this is a gathering of the modernists. This is the fertile ground of heresy. I can't even form words right now. Neither secularization nor globalization are negative processes, but rather opportunities. Really. Both of those are social destabilizing forces, if there have ever been any, unleashed on the broader society. You want to talk about bringing secularization into the church? Go look back to the 1960s and tell us how well that worked out. You want to double down on that nonsense. Secularization is not something we should be opposed to. Actually, all real Catholics are opposed to secularizing the church further and are opposed to secularizing the culture even further than it already is. As you can see from this, there's a plain effort to let children who have been indoctrinated in the public and secularized Catholic schools, typically run by Jesuits and pantsuit-wearing nuns, to let them change the teachings on the church as they regard not only human sexuality, but the family as well. Remember, all of this is being done in the shadow and spirit of Amoris Laetitia, which enabled some dioceses to offer sacrilegious Holy Communion to the divorced and civilly remarried, with the express support of the Vatican. Amoris Laetitia has been explicitly cited by the Synod Fathers as inspiration for the Synod. And to give you an idea of just how much of a dumpster fire the Synod truly is, canon law was recently changed in such a way that has left the Synod without real working rules to govern its process, leaving many to openly claim that the process is being manipulated from the outside by the Vatican. The following is from the Catholic Herald. Headline: Will bishops push for clarity on the Synod's procedural rules? 2 weeks in, decisions about the Synod's rules have still not been announced. Recent changes to canon law have left some bishops attending the 2018 Synod of Bishops uncertain about the meeting's procedural rules. Unanswered questions about the Synod's norms could have significant effect on how the meeting's final documents are regarded in the Church and by the Synod Fathers themselves. The Synod's Undersecretary, Bishop Fabio Fabin, told reporters in early October that because of changes Pope Francis made to Synod policies September 15th, the Vatican had not yet decided on the exact rules for this month's Synod. The Pope changed the rules about 2 weeks before the Synod started. I want you to remember to hang on to that. Asked whether Synod participants would be able to vote on individual provisions of the document as they have in prior meetings, Fabin said it would depend on what emerged from the Synod, adding that as we move along, we will decide. I wonder who we is. But 2 weeks into the gathering, decisions about the Synod's procedural and voting rules have not yet been announced. Several Synod Fathers have told CNA they are confused about the rules, or uncertain about how the Synod's voting process will actually work. Like I said, this is a dumpster fire. They're making decisions about the future of the Church without any governing rules to guide the process. In the absence of clear norms, some observers have begun to ask whether the 2018 Synod will prove to be an authentic consultation of the world's bishops or an exercise only in the periods of synodality. Synods are meetings of bishops gathered to discuss a topic of theological or pastoral significance in order to prepare a document of advice or counsel to the Pope. The discussion at a synod is framed around an instrumentum laboris, a working document, developed before the meeting by a small working committee of Vatican officials and diocesan bishops. During a synod, bishops make comments and observations on the working document and meet in small discussion groups to propose changes to the text or to suggest new text and additional areas for consideration. The 2018 Synod, a meeting of 267 bishops and other church leaders, is tasked with developing a document on young people, the faith, and vocational discernment. The modern form of synods in the Latin Catholic Church began with the 1965 promulgation of Pope Paul VI Apostolica Solicitudo. That document established some processes and procedures governing the work of a synod, as did revisions made in 1969 and 1971. The 1983 Code of Canon Law gave additional clarity. But the 2006 rescript Ordo Synodi Episcoporum established the most detailed procedural rules for every aspect of a synod of bishops, among them the election of members, the appointment, work, and authority of the General Secretariat and General Relator, and the voting on proposals, modi, and documents, including the points to be included in the final report. Ordo Synodi Episcoporum required that modi and documents be voted on according to a procedure allowing bishops to make additional amendments and delineating specific cases when a 2/3 majority of voting bishops be required, and other cases that would require only an absolute majority of bishops, 50+1. This was at the time when Benedict XVI was the Pope, and it looked like the procedures there were there to make sure nothing crazy would happen. According to these procedural rules, Synod Fathers were able to vote on proposals made for amendments or additions to the document and eventually to vote on their approval of the document as a whole. Those votes would require 2/3 majorities. Again, from a purely organizational theory perspective, which is part of my sort of specialty as an academic, this is looks like a very sane process they had before. I wonder why they changed it. Let's find out. Though these procedural norms were tweaked in recent years, they remained largely intact. But on September 15th, they were abrogated, revoked, when Pope Francis promulgated a new document governing the synods, the Apostolic Constitution Episcopalis Communio. It eliminated nearly all specific procedural norms pertaining to the synod, including the established procedures for proposing amendments and for voting, and sets no specific approval thresholds for documents generated by the synod. More ambiguity. This is institutionalized ambiguity. If you had any doubts that Pope Francis's ambiguous statements were not purposeful when he makes them in airline press conferences and that sort of thing, this should be your proof that that is his modus operandi, that it is all on purpose. He is the master of ambiguous statements. I'll let you read the rest of that article on your own on their website. A link will be in the description below. And then finally, there is this video. It speaks for itself. It's from the actual synod.
Well, as old folks we should not be afraid to embark on this new path that the Pope is pointing out to us. It is a path that will that is leading us to new kinds of families, new family relations, in a way, and we should not be afraid to open up to this. Amoris Laetitia. Actually, I was about to quote the wrong text.
As you can see, this is all a giant dumpster fire. I keep using that term because it's the only thing I can think of to describe what we're seeing play out in front of our eyes. Pray for the priests, pray for the Pope, pray for all the youth and the lay people who are attending and who are there with good intentions, who they think they're doing the will of God. Pray for clarity and pray for the church. If you like videos like this, please like this video and subscribe and click that notification bell below, please. I can be found on Twitter and Facebook with links in the description. For Return to Tradition, I'm Anthony Stein. Viva Cristo Rey.